I'm going to keep this straightforward because I know a lot of you are on the fence about stepping up from a phone or a compact camera to something that promises real-world video quality without turning you into a tech wizard. The question isn't just, does this camcorder shoot 4K? It's whether it actually fits into the way you work, the lighting you usually have, and the budget you're willing to stretch. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last few weeks testing a few Canon camcorders for the channel, and the XF705 landed on my table as the professional-grade entry point that Canon hopes will appeal to hobbyists who want to step up, but also to small business creators who need a reliable tool for client work. First off, the most immediate hesitation people have is about ease of use. A lot of camcorders hide powerful features behind nested menus that make you feel like you need a manual the size of a novel. The XF705's menu system is actually pretty clean for a Canon. The primary shooting modes sit on the top dial, and you can switch between 4K 60p, 4K 30p, and 1080-120p with a single turn. The secondary menu for picture profiles is a little deeper, but it's still organized by logical sections, color, detail, sharpness rather than cryptic code names. For someone who's used a DSLR and is comfortable tapping a couple of icons, the learning curve feels modest. If you're a total beginner who's never touched a manual focus ring, the autofocus will be your safety net. Autofocus confidence is where the XF705 starts to show why Canon's reputation matters. The 1-inch CMOS sensor pairs with Canon's dual-pixel AF, which means you get smooth, continuous focus tracking even when you're moving the camera around a wedding aisle or a live stream setup. In practice, I found the focus to lock on faces within a second, and it held even when the subject turned their head. The downside is that the AF can hunt a bit in very low-contrast scenes, think a dimly lit CAF with a single light source. In those moments you'll have to give the camera a nudge or switch to manual focus, which is still easy to do thanks to the dedicated focus ring on the zoom lens. Low-light behavior is a common worry for anyone considering a camcorder that isn't a full-frame cinema camera. The 1-inch sensor is bigger than the typical 1/2.3 in CH sensors you see in consumer camcorders, so it does pull in more light, and the 13.4 megapixel count gives you decent detail. In my tests shooting a backyard concert at around 30 lux, the XF705 produced clean 4K footage with only a slight amount of noise in the shadows. Push the ISO too high past 6400 and you'll start seeing the grain that any small sensor brings, but for most indoor events, the built-in ISO range feels comfortable. If you plan to do serious low-light documentary work, you might still want a larger sensor, but for weddings, corporate talks, and YouTube-style content, it's a solid middle ground. Stabilization is another practical point. The camcorder includes a built-in optical image stabilizer that works in tandem with the 15 optical zoom. When I walked through a museum with a handheld shot, the footage stayed remarkably steady, and the zoom didn't introduce any jitter that you'd see with a basic digital zoom. The digital 30 zoom, however, does start to feel softer and a bit shaky if you rely solely on the sensor's electronic stabilization. So the takeaway is, stick to the optical range for smooth pans, and if you need to go beyond, consider a gimbal for the best results. Now, about the lens ecosystem. Canon's camcorders use the EFM mount, which means you have a fairly extensive library of lenses, from wide-angle primes to long telephoto optics. The kit zoom that ships with the XF705 is a 15, which covers roughly 24 to 360 mm in 35 equivalent terms, enough for most event work. If you already own EF lenses for a DSLR, you can mount them directly without adapters, and you'll get the same dual-pixel AF performance. That continuity can be a real money saver if you're migrating from stills to video. On the flip side, the camcorder's body isn't designed for interchangeable lenses beyond the EFM mount, so you can't slide in a cinema-grade PL lens without a heavy adapter, which defeats the lightweight appeal of a camcorder. Battery confidence is something I always test by doing a full day of shooting on a single charge. The XF705 uses Canon's LPE8 battery, which on my shoot lasted about 2.5 hours of continuous 4K 60p recording. That's pretty typical for camcorders with a 1-inch sensor and high bitrate recording. The good news is that the battery is hot swappable. You can replace it without turning the cam off, which keeps you rolling during longer events. If you're planning a half-day shoot, one spare battery is usually enough. For a full-day shoot you'll want a second spare or an external power pack. So who should actually buy this thing? If you're a